The air was thick with celebration. At the University of Manchester's Grand Hall, laughter and applause echoed through the ancient stone arches. It was my graduation day, the culmination of sleepless nights, bitter coffee, and pages upon pages of research. I stood there in my cap and gown, beaming with pride as my name was called. Eleanor Grace Whitmore. My heart thudded as I walked across the stage, clutching the degree I had worked so hard to earn. My mother was in the front row, tears glistening in her eyes. She waved with both hands, nearly knocking her phone from her lap. My little brother Tom held up a homemade sign that read, "Well done, Ellie." I smiled, warmed by their support. And then I saw her. Aunt Claudia. Leaning against a pillar at the far end of the hall, dressed in her usual perfectly tailored coat, arms crossed, and that ever-persistent scowl on her face. I hadn't invited her. I didn't want her there. For years, she had dismissed my dreams, ridiculed my choices, and labeled my education as a waste of time. I told myself to ignore her. Today was supposed to be about me. But after the ceremony, as we gathered outside for photos, she approached, slow, deliberate steps clicking on the cobblestones. "Well," she began, eyeing my degree like it was a soiled napkin, "it's good to see you finally managed to finish something." I felt my breath hitch. "Mom, can you take a photo?" I said quickly, trying to shift focus. But Aunt Claudia wasn't finished. "Do you think a degree in literature will actually get you a job, Eleanor? Or is this just another expensive hobby?" Tom looked up at me, confused. My mother stepped forward, trying to defuse the moment, but it was too late. The joy had soured. I felt the words rising in my throat, but I swallowed them. Not here. Not today. Instead, I smiled for the photo, holding my degree as if it meant nothing. But something shifted inside me. I knew I would prove her wrong. Not with anger. With success. What I didn't know was how far I'd have to go, or how many secrets she had hidden in the shadows of our family. To be continued. 2 weeks had passed since graduation, and I was still trying to shake off Aunt Claudia's words. I had moved back home temporarily, saving money while I searched for a job in publishing. Most days were quiet. Mornings filled with emails and cover letters, afternoons with tea and job boards. Until one morning, a thick cream envelope arrived. No sender's address. Just my name in sharp black ink. Eleanor G. Whitmore. The handwriting felt strangely familiar, elegant and old-fashioned, like it belonged in a forgotten diary. I turned it over, broke the wax seal, and unfolded the letter inside. "Dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer alive. I've asked my solicitor to ensure this reaches you directly. What I am about to reveal has been buried for far too long, and it concerns your future, and hers." My hands froze. It was signed, Isabel Whitmore. My grandmother. But she had died 10 years ago. I sat down, heart pounding. The rest of the letter told of a long-held family secret, that the Whitmore estate, our ancestral home in Yorkshire, was never meant to pass to Aunt Claudia. It had been promised in writing to me. But the will had vanished shortly before Gran's death. Everyone assumed it had been updated. It hadn't. Gran had hidden a copy of the original will in a safe behind the fireplace of the estate's library. The letter included a key and a code. I couldn't believe it. That house, the sprawling ivy-covered Whitmore Hall, had belonged to my great-grandparents. Claudia had taken control after Gran died, moving in like royalty. She'd claimed it was her birthright. But if the letter was real, that house, and everything that came with it, was mine. I tucked the letter back into the envelope just as Mum walked in with a tray of toast. "You all right, love? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. Just thinking. I didn't tell her. Not yet. Instead, I made plans. If Claudia had stolen what was rightfully mine, then I would take it back. But not with lawyers. With truth. And maybe, just maybe, with revenge. To be continued. It was raining when I arrived in Yorkshire. I'd taken the earliest train, a small suitcase in hand and Gran's letter tucked safely in my coat. The countryside rolled by in misty waves of green and gray, the kind of landscape that always made me feel like I'd stepped into a ghost story. Whitmore Hall stood just as I remembered it. Proud, cold, and silent. Ivy curled around its stone walls like veins, and the tall iron gates creaked open when I pushed. No one knew I was coming. Claudia had taken a short trip to London, according to the housekeeper's out-of-office reply. Perfect. The front door still opened with a firm push. The smell hit me instantly. Aged wood, old books, and a hint of rosewater. Memories flooded back. Christmases with Gran, summer afternoons in the library, Claudia yelling at the gardener from the balcony. I moved quickly. The library was just as I'd left it. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, packed with dusty volumes. The fireplace loomed at the far end. I knelt and found the old brass plate Gran had once shown me. Behind it, a small dial. I entered the code. Click. The panel shifted open, revealing a narrow compartment, and inside, a tin box with Gran's initials. I opened it slowly. There it was. A folded document stamped and dated. Gran's true will. Clear as day. Everything left to me. Not Claudia. Not shared. Mine. I scanned the legal lines, my hands trembling. She'd lied to everyone. But why? I was about to close the compartment when I saw something else. A photograph, tucked beneath the will. I pulled it out. It was a picture of Gran. Holding a baby. Me. But what shocked me wasn't the photo. It was the note on the back. Keep her safe. Claudia must never find out. I stared at it, confused. Why would Gran want to hide me? What did Claudia do? Thunder rumbled outside as I put everything back into the box and closed the compartment. There were too many questions, and no one to answer them. But one thing was clear. Gran had never trusted Claudia. And now neither would I. As I stepped out into the rain again, I didn't feel like a girl anymore. I felt like someone who had something to reclaim. Claudia returned 2 days later, her black car sweeping through the gravel driveway like a shark circling its prey. I watched her from the guest bedroom window, heart thudding. The tin box and Gran's will were hidden deep in my suitcase, locked tight. She didn't know. Yet. That evening, she hosted a dinner. Just like old times. Always performative. Expensive cutlery, crystal glasses, her best vintage wine. She dressed in emerald green and diamonds, acting the part of grieving niece and gracious host. You've grown into such a beautiful young woman, she said, fake warmth coating her words like honey over poison. Thank you, Aunt Claudia. I played along. For now. The other guests were local socialites, old friends of the family, and 2 men I didn't recognize. Both in suits, both far too curious about me. Claudia watched everything. Her eyes missed nothing. Darling, she said sweetly, placing a hand on my shoulder during dessert. I was just telling Mr. Radcliffe about how close you and Gran were. You must be devastated. Of course, I replied, holding her gaze. But I find peace in knowing her wishes were respected. Her smile twitched. That was the first crack. Later that night, I pretended to go to bed early. Instead, I crept down to the study. Claudia's laptop was still open. Password protected, of course. But Gran's birthday was the key. Emails. Dozens of them. Lawyers, estate agents, developers. She'd been planning to sell Whitmore whole. 4 months. And there it was. An unsigned contract with a foreign investor. The buyer? None other than her business partner, Mr. Radcliffe. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about power. Control. Claudia had been orchestrating this for a long time. If the will had stayed hidden, she'd have sold off our family's legacy and vanished with the money. I copied the emails to a USB stick and slipped it into my pocket. But as I turned to leave, I froze. She was standing in the doorway. Claudia. I thought I heard mice, she said, her voice calm but sharp as glass. I stood straighter. No more pretending. I know what you did. She stepped into the room slowly, heels echoing on the hardwood. And what exactly is it you think you know, dear? She wasn't scared. She was calculating. This wasn't over. Not even close. The next morning was unusually silent. Claudia acted as if nothing had happened. She poured tea, offered me toast, and chatted about garden renovations. Her mask had returned. Smooth, composed, elegant. But I saw the storm behind her eyes. I couldn't stay passive. If she had seen those files, she might have deleted them overnight. My USB was now hidden in a book sleeve, taped beneath the lining. I carried it with me everywhere. Midday came, and Claudia announced she'd be driving into town. Perfect. I waited exactly 10 minutes after her car vanished down the drive, then dashed down to the cellar. It was the one place in the house she never let anyone near. Not the housekeepers, not the guests, not even Gran toward the end. The air was damp and thick. Old stone walls. Cobwebs. I turned on the torch on my phone and stepped carefully. What was she hiding? Past the wine racks and shelves of dusty boxes, I found a narrow wooden door. It looked newer than the rest of the house. Padlocked. My heart pounded. I rummaged through the tool drawers nearby and found bolt cutters. Rusted, but still sharp enough. With a few hard squeezes, the padlock snapped open. Inside was a small room. Stacks of papers. Folders. Black binders labeled with property names and fake company titles. Receipts. Contracts. Digital storage drives. Claudia's empire of lies. She'd been siphoning money through shell companies, laundering cash from Whitmore Hall's properties and assets. There were even records of bribes paid to local officials. Dozens of signatures. And then, photos. Photos of me. At school. At Gran's bedside. Even one from last night's dinner. She had me watched. She had always been watching. I heard it then, a soft creak from upstairs. The door. She was back. I snatched the files I could carry, jammed them into my coat, and fled up the back stairs. As I reached the main corridor, I collided into someone. Claudia. She wasn't alone. Beside her stood one of the men from the dinner party. Mr. Radcliffe. You've been snooping, she said coldly. I met her gaze. I didn't flinch. Why did you keep photos of me, Aunt Claudia? Her face darkened. For a moment, I saw the real woman behind the performance. You don't understand what you've done. She stepped forward, but Radcliffe held her arm. Not here, he muttered. Let's not make a scene. A scene? She was planning something worse. She turned away, but not before whispering, just loud enough for me to hear. You'll regret this. No, I thought. You will. That night, sleep didn't come. I paced my room, replaying every word Claudia had said. Every glance. Every warning. The files I had stolen were now in a hidden compartment inside my suitcase, encrypted copies uploaded to cloud storage. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was preparing for war. By morning, I received an unexpected delivery. An envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just my name, in elegant handwriting I recognized instantly. Gran's. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter. Dated 3 days before her death. My dearest Ella, it began. If you are reading this, then I have failed to protect you from Claudia's intentions. She's not the woman she pretends to be. I kept things hidden to keep you safe, but perhaps that was a mistake. You need to know the truth. Your parents didn't die in an accident. Claudia had a hand in it. She wasn't alone, but she pulled the strings. She wanted the inheritance, not just Whitmore Hall, but the businesses, the trust, the future I had planned for you. You were meant to have everything. She feared that. She still does. I couldn't breathe. The letter continued, naming the solicitor who had helped cover the story. Claudia had paid him off. There were names, dates, accounts, and even a hint that Gran had started to undo the damage. Slowly, secretly, with the help of a whistleblower who once worked for Claudia. Everything Gran had done had been for me. And now, she was trusting me to finish what she had started. I folded the letter and held it to my chest. My parents. It wasn't just greed. It was betrayal. Murder. Covered in pearls and polite smiles. I needed proof stronger than what I had. So I went to see the solicitor. Harold Merriweather. His office was above a dusty bookshop in Bath. I pretended to be a client. Asked for help with estate planning. Waited until he left the room to fetch a document. Then I unlocked his desk drawer. And there it was. An old recorder. Tucked under a stack of documents. I hit play. It was Claudia's voice. I don't care what the girl thinks. Ella will do as she's told. She won't find out. Ever. Another voice responded. You promised me this would be clean, Claudia. Not like last time. Last time was necessary. If you want your pension to stay intact, you'll do exactly as I say. I copied the file. And just as I did, I heard the door click. Meriwether stood there, holding a cup of tea. "You shouldn't have come here, Miss Whitmore." I looked him in the eye. "You helped her cover up my parents' deaths. That makes you complicit." He sighed, then slowly sat at his desk. "Do you want to end her?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. He nodded once. "Then listen carefully." Meriwether spoke in hushed tones. "She's planning something," he said. "She thinks she's won. But this party, this gala at Whitmore Hall? That's not just a celebration. It's a trap. She's going to announce that she's taking full control of the family estate, pushing your inheritance out entirely. If she does it in public, no one will question her authority." I felt my fists clench. "She thinks I'll just let that happen? She's gambling that you'll stay quiet. That you don't have the courage, or the evidence, to stand against her." I took out the recorder. She's wrong. For the next few days, I worked in silence, gathering every last piece. I reached out to Gran's old contacts. A former housekeeper. A retired accountant. Even a journalist who had once tried to expose Claudia but mysteriously lost his job. Each of them gave me more. Receipts. Emails. Photographs. Then, the invitation arrived. An ivory envelope. Hand-delivered. With gold-embossed lettering. The Whitmore Winter Gala. Hosted by Claudia Whitmore. In celebration of the family legacy. She wanted to rub it in. To parade her victory. I RSVP'd yes. The day of the gala, I dressed in one of Gran's old gowns. Midnight blue, silk, with lace that shimmered like frost. A tribute. A warning. As I walked into Whitmore Hall, nothing had changed, yet everything had. I was no longer the scared girl who had left this house with nothing. I was the rightful heir. The ballroom was packed. Chandeliers sparkled. Champagne flowed. Guests danced, laughed, complimented Claudia on how radiant she looked. She saw me. For the briefest second, her face twitched. But then the mask returned. "Darling Ella," she purred. "I wasn't sure you'd come." I smiled. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." "Still dressing like Eleanor, I see." "I think she'd approve." She clinked her glass against mine. "Tonight, everything changes." "You're right about that," I said, and took a sip. The orchestra played. And then Claudia stepped up to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice echoing over the crowd. "Thank you all for coming. Tonight is more than a celebration. It is a new beginning. I am proud to announce that Whitmore Hall and all its holdings will be restructured under my sole leadership." Polite applause filled the room. And as for my beloved niece Ella, I wish her the best in whatever path she chooses next. People turned to look at me. Smiling. Clapping. As if this were a fairy tale ending. I stepped forward. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "before everyone toasts to Claudia's triumph, I have a few words to share." The music stopped. All eyes were on me. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a small device. I believe the truth deserves its moment too. Then I pressed play. Claudia's voice filled the hall. "I don't care what the girl thinks. Ella will do as she's told." A gasp rippled through the room. Claudia lunged forward. "Turn that off." But I had already sent the recordings, the documents, the files, all of it, to every major news outlet, law firm, and government office that had ever dealt with the Whitmore name. I met her eyes. And smiled. The silence in Whitmore Hall was deafening. Claudia stood frozen, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. The recording echoed one final time, before I pressed stop. Then the questions began. Voices from the crowd. What does she mean by inheritance theft? Is it true, Claudia? Who else was involved? Claudia tried to laugh. A sharp, brittle sound. This is nonsense. Manufactured. That girl has always had a flair for the dramatic. But Meriwether stepped forward. I verified every file. Every timestamp. Every name on those bank transfers. It's real. You've embezzled hundreds of thousands from the family trust. The guests, once polite and adoring, backed away. Someone whispered, "Call the police." Claudia's face hardened. "You think this changes anything?" "That I'll let you win." "I don't need your permission," I said quietly. You lost the moment you decided Gran's death was a business opportunity. Security entered the room. They weren't here for me. Claudia was escorted out. Her screams echoed down the hall like a ghost refusing to fade. The rest of the night passed in a blur. People left early. Reporters showed up. Statements were taken. Evidence was copied. But I was calm. I had done what Gran would have wanted. Weeks passed. The investigation moved quickly. With the evidence I had provided, the fraud case against Claudia was airtight. The trust was reinstated. My name was restored as the rightful heir. But that wasn't all. Gran's real will, the one Claudia had hidden, was found in an old safe behind a portrait. It detailed everything. Her wishes. Her fears. And a letter to me. My dearest Ella. You are the future of this family. I know the world may try to push you aside. But never forget, you are stronger than they know. I read those words again and again. And on the first spring morning of the year, I stood at the gates of Whitmore Hall. Not as a guest. Not as a victim. But as its owner. The grounds were quiet. Blossoms were blooming. And for the first time in years, the house felt warm again. Inside the parlor, I placed Gran's photograph above the mantel. She's home, I whispered. There was still work to do. Old wounds to mend. Foundations to rebuild. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had faced my past. And I had reclaimed my name.